All right. Welcome to the Humans of Flippa. And we're going to go through this founder story here with Samantha Hamilton. I'm really excited to sit down with Samantha. She started Dottie for running in 2015 from her one-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles while working in the fashion industry at the time. So really excited to kind of unpack all of the success that she has seen, including an exit on Flippa. So welcome to the show, Samantha.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Yeah. So let's start with your personal journey. What led you to start the business?
Well, as you mentioned, I launched in 2015. And at the time, I was the director of sales for a mid-level contemporary women's clothing brand, which was very exciting. But I had sort of accomplished everything that I had set out to do, and was starting to think about what was next. I was living in LA, and was thinking about relocating. Really, the only thing that I knew for sure that I wanted to do was I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to own my own business, and I wasn't entirely sure at that point what that looked like. And I had saved a little money, but not by any stretch of the imagination a lot of money when you're talking about launching anything. So I started trying to think about what would have a relatively low overhead that I could control a lot, and just sort of honestly go through the process of starting a business, and even all of the legalities behind that, and just get my feet wet a little bit with sort of a low risk situation. And then, sort of parallel to that, in 2014, I'd got into distance running, and have always been a Disney fan. So naturally, the Run Disney series was a good fit for me. Say since 2014, I had been doing quite a few of their races. One of the sort of exciting bits of those races is people tend to dress up in character running costumes. And my mum, who is very creative, very talented, helped me sort of, see some of these like creations come to life. She had made what ultimately became the prototypes for the original Dottie skirts. And they were just, little princess-based tutus with huge bows on the back, which was like sort of something that she and I both loved. Um, and I got stopped so much during the races and asked about the skirts that it sort of made me start thinking, like, is this something that, is this the key? Is this the thing that I can sort of invest in and just start to build a business around? And indeed it was. So I opened on Etsy.
Mhm.
I initially had about a $5,000 investment, and that all went to materials, and I just opened as like a sole proprietorship. So the costs there, as far as like starting the actual business, were very low. The other thing that I knew I wanted to do was I had been working with overseas production in my sort of big girl full-time job. And I knew were a lot of costs there, and obviously a huge initial investment. And then a huge part of my job was working with the logistics of that. And it requires a lot of hands-on time, to sort of make sure that everything's in the right place at the right time, to communicate with everybody, et cetera, et cetera. So I very much wanted to keep everything as local as possible and keep everything in the US. So we went through a couple of different resources. My dad happened to be an administrator at the University of Alabama, and they have an entrepreneur outreach program, which focuses on bringing together small businesses and bringing together individuals who are just starting out. I was looking for production, and they had a bunch of seamstresses in certain areas of Alabama that were looking for small batch work. They made the introduction, and until my exit from the business, we were still working with the same lady, Miss Lily, who we had been connected with, and who had made the initial samples and did the a bulk of the production for us until the end. So when I launched, I had done a little buy with just like 3 or 4 designs. And it was sort of with the mentality of, hey, like if I sell 10 of these and get to sort of like go through the process of shipping and like doing all the paperwork and invoicing and everything and building this little platform, that's a success in my eyes. And lo and behold, I sort of found my niche. The business found its niche, found its people, and then 10 years later, I was in the position to work with Flippa and try and find a buyer to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
So yeah, because as I'm sure we'll talk about, in those 10 years of the business's life so far, my personal life changed a lot, and it did get to the point where I felt like I was getting in my own way, and it was the right time.
Hmm. Yeah. And at what point did you really start considering seriously to sell?
Well, so now I have 3 small children. Since the launch of the business, I genuinely met a I was swept off my feet by a handsome officer, and I'm a military spouse, so we move every couple of years. So when you're talking about a business that has inventory and production to, it needs really a stationary home when it gets to a certain size. So that was kind of a constant hurdle that I would not have been able to get over without the help of it being a family business and my parents getting involved and really helping with shipping and logistics. But my husband and I now have 3 young children. My oldest is 5. And yeah, when I found out I was pregnant with my third, um, and having gone through, trying to keep the business running as smoothly as possible with no hiccups through 2 other births and young children, that was when I really started seriously looking into it and dabbling into what it would entail, what the business was valued at. Mm, And in the background, I was actually starting to downsize the business in case I was going to keep ownership of it and continue running it. And yeah, and so I had friends who had worked with Flippa before, a few years ago. They recommended it. I reached out. It was very smooth, very quick to get set up with someone who assisted me through everything.
Nice. And when it comes to the initial start, were you always thinking about building it to exit, or was that just that came later once you had
No,
children? There was
yeah,
never really a thought around it?
yeah, I genuinely thought, I never in a million years thought that Dottie for Running would become the established business that it became. Um, I genuinely thought that if I didn't think we would be doing 10,000 a year in revenue. I really thought that I was like in my own little sparkly world, just, trying something new. And it was going to be a different business that was going to be sort of like my bread and butter, my real earner. And then, we had a lot of very organic growth. And as I said, we really found that niche. And then by the exit, it was doing 6 figures in revenue every year, and it became more than I ever imagined.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned Etsy. Can you walk us through the business model, like how it generated revenue
Yeah,
over the course of the journey?
Etsy was a wonderful partnership to have for starting out with sort of a handmade goods. I think that being on that platform really helped to establish my customer base and make me visible. And it is truly astounding and amazing the amount of traffic that they get. And they make the process as a business owner very, very easy. Like you can build your shop from square one, as far as how it looks and everything, and you can customize a lot of things. And then they take care of a lot of the back end of the business. So you're truly able to focus on producing and then shipping and customer service. Once the business reached a certain size, I started crunching some of the numbers with fees and things like that to decide what was best for me, what was best for the business as far as like the hosting of the shop and everything. And we did make the jump to Shopify. That would have been in 2022. So we were with Etsy for a long time. But then once I sort of got over the imposter syndrome of what the business was and realized that, hey, I have a quote unquote real business here, and an established customer base, that's when we made the jump to just taking a bit more ownership over it and taking a bit more control over it, with the Shopify platform.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a good move going to an established e-commerce platform like that. That
Absolutely.
makes sense.
Once you sort of get to like grips with everything, once you sort of know a bit more, like the ebb and flow of everything and what your personal sort of like production cycle and shipping cycle look like, I think that's the time when, you can sort of take off the training wheels and
Yeah.
and go about it on your own.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into milestones. Like what kind of milestones did you have set up when you were, growing the business?
Goodness. So, I did use a lot of like social media to sort of try and
Mhm.
grow the word about the brand and everything. And say I saw very steady growth through that. Um, Ironically, a huge milestone for us came about because of COVID. And while the lockdowns and COVID itself were obviously a struggle for everybody, um, I think one of the silver linings that came out of it was it really like sort of pushed people's creativity and their need and want to like connect and be together. And so I found that the community, which we dubbed Team Butt Bow, surrounding the bows and surrounding like the Run Disney community in particular, really, really came together and really supported each other in a major way. And by that time, I had built a small group of ambassadors who, were very visible within like the Run Disney community in particular, and were organic customers who then, like I sort of noticed them and invited them to be a part of the program. Um, they were at home doing dancing videos and doing creative posts and games and everything you can imagine online on their social media platforms. And it really garnered a lot of attention. And then where I think people were anticipating the return to sort of quote unquote normalcy and quote unquote and the return to being able to do everything in person, that really translated to sales. And where we had seen a steady growth year over year up until that point, at 2020 and 2021 were a huge transitional time for us. Revenue sort of like quadrupled, I think, like in those couple of years. And that's when I felt like, hey, like I have a legitimate business. Like we sort of crossed the six-figure mark as far as annual revenue went. And it clearly had sort of like a name and a reputation throughout like this small niche community, but that was translating to sales, and it was translating to like a proper operating business. Um, so honestly, that was the return of the Run Disney races in 2021 was such a joyous time anyway for everybody. Let's say getting back to some kind of normalcy and in-person events and everything. But personally, for Dottie for running, it was a huge milestone for us, and
Mhm.
when I really felt like, say, legitimized. And then say like after that, it's just been all good things since then and
Nice.
sort of like relearning how to handle the day-to-day operations and everything and how to handle that kind of volume.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that was the biggie.
Nice. And we could kind of touch on timing when it was the right time to sell, but let's go into the sales process a little bit. Like
Yes.
what was that like with Flippa? What kind of support did they offer
Yeah.
initially and throughout the sale?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously I had done my due diligence when I first started thinking about selling.
Mhm.
And I had spoken to, a couple of people like who are in the brokerage world and everything, and I had a general idea of what my sort of target range was supposed to be for the valuation of the company. Um, and I say I had looked into like selling it privately with a private broker for a for a business worth low six figures, the costs of that, it's hard to justify that. Not to mention you have to sort of like hire everything and everybody individually. I was gonna have to hire my own lawyer, I was gonna have to hire my own accountant, and that all adds up very, very quickly. Not to mention you're already sort of like diving into a world that can be a little bit intimidating and overwhelming, and then just to like put up that kind of money up front is terrifying. So as I mentioned, I had some friends who had experience with Flippa previously, with their small business, or boutique business, as I like to say for our sort of size. And so I just thought, like, what harm could it do to look into it and reach out and just see what the process would be and everything. Um, right off the bat, the valuation I was given was right in line with it was bang slap in the middle of the range that I had in mind that I had been sort of given previously. Um, I was linked up with a wonderful agent, a wonderful broker named Maliha. She really, really immediately like got on the phone with me and just was sort of like, "Hey, like I really, really like this is such a wonderful thing that you've done here. It's a very niche market, and so this is how we need to approach this." And the thing that I remember that she said to me that sort of remained our mantra sort of throughout the process was she said, it's a niche business. You're not going to get 1,000 buyers, you're not going to have 100 offers. You just need that one buyer who gets it
Mhm.
and who understands it. So we're looking for the one right buyer.
Mhm.
And obviously one of the for a type A personality who enjoys stats and numbers and tracking everything, it was very exciting to be able to sort of track along with Flipper and see like how much interest there was in real time, how many clicks it was getting, how many NDAs were being signed, or things like that. And again, I was amazed that daily we were getting updates, daily we were getting interest. And everything that that Malia had said to me was sort of like coming into very visible fruition. Like we were getting a lot of interest from venture capitalists because obviously it's a 10-year-old business. It's established in that sense. But where we were sort of like losing them was it's not necessarily a turnkey business in the sense that it's not a dropship model that's already established. It's not something that you can hire one person and sort of like, set and forget. It requires a hands-on business owner, even if it's just assisting with design and buying and all things like that. And then one day, just a couple of months into the listing being live, the young lady who eventually became our buyer did come along, and she was a first-time business buyer, but she was in the Run Disney community. She had heard of the brand, and I just thought, like she understands that customer base already, and so it takes off that huge, like, sort of, like, learning curve for her.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, we began negotiations from there. Malia and Flippa very much took care of that. And it was a seamless and easy process.
Nice. Nice. We kind of went through the timing to sell, the how Flippa supported, talked about valuation where you said it landed right in the middle as to your expectations. Really leaned in there to how Malia helped throughout the sales process and did a great job there. How long, you mentioned a couple months that it was listed. How long did it take from the listing to the exit?
I think it took the entire 30 days, and that was truly just because of like obviously I wanted my lawyer to look over the agreement. She wanted her lawyer to look over the agreement, and it was really just like minutia that we were going back and forth on and changing in the final sale documents. But again, we did go back and forth, I think twice with like actual like negotiations on the figure. And Malia and Flippa like very much like took care of sort of any to making sure there was no sort of awkwardness with that, like and keeping it as like as cut and dry as possible. And we landed on a number and that obviously I think everybody was very happy with. Yeah, it made the exit sort of seamless and the like it took away any of the question marks for someone going through this for the first time. So I'll always be appreciative of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And when it comes to like make or break decisions, when you were negotiating, were there any that kind of came up when it came to the valuation, when the buyer came to you?
I knew, like I had a sort of bottom line in the back of my mind that I needed to be above for
Hmm.
me to sort of make it like worth it, in my mind to part with the business because of course like there's an emotional element to it as well as practical and based on sort of like the income that I was like paying myself each year and everything, I had that bottom line number and we got like close to it with the initial offers. And it didn't make me nervous, but I knew right away that like I had to go back. Like I didn't want to like completely sort of kill the offer, but like I also had to talk through it with Malia about like, hey, like we need to be like that's way too much of like a drop, too much of like a cut that I'm comfortable with. And that was really like where she very much sort of like held my hand and said, no, like, okay, well, like if you need to be here and they're coming in here, then we're just gonna go back right here and I'll take care of
Uh-huh.
it.
Uh-huh.
And so that was really the only sort of like I had got so excited that there was this like seemingly perfect buyer, and then the initial offer just being so close to the bottom line, like but again, say like Malia, she very much like took care of it and was like, nope, like you have to take care of you, like you are running a bit, you're still running a
Uh-huh.
business here, and she was like, I am certain this is not going to scare them away to go back.
Yeah. And when it came to picking the buyer, you mentioned before, like VCs approached you, but it was more so like an operator had to be the buyer from what you described. So what were some of the factors that went into it? I know you mentioned that the woman who purchased it was also in the community, the Run Disney community, but what were some other factors?
Well, so, say I'm a mum of young children. I am in that chapter of life now, where I was looking for the luxury of having more time, to focus on them and to be at home and to be present without any distractions. Um, she, as it turns out, is on the other end of things. Her children are about to be like one is graduated from high school, one is on the way to graduation, and she was looking for, okay, what's next for me? Like she's had a corporate job, and wanted really a passion project for herself. And as soon as she said passion project, I was like, that's exactly what this is, that's exactly how this came about, and it's exactly what it needs, because the customer community needs to see that like genuine love, and that genuine sort of understanding of what is on offer here, and say like I just felt like she understood all of that, and say we did have the chance to talk like on the phone and on like the platform and everything beforehand, and at the end of the day we just get along. And I knew that we both knew that obviously there would be a transition time of getting her set up with the business, and we would be in contact, quite often and everything. And, at the end of the day, it's nice if it's someone that like you can communicate with, on a nice level and genuinely enjoy. So that really did put my mind at rest as far as all that goes.
Nice. And when you were going through the process, did you have to compromise on any part of the deal or with your vision for the future? Any compromises?
I think so. It's an interesting question because obviously I think the answer to that is more so part of like when you're thinking about selling, you do have to sort of emotionally prepare yourself. If it's a business that you have built, that you are close to, and that is very much your vision, you have to accept that if there's a new leader, a new captain at the helm, that it's going to look different from how you've been doing things, or it's not going to be the exact vision that you had in head for the in your mind for the future. And you just have to sort of embrace the fact that like, you've kind of like, you've given it wings now, and it's going to go and be its own thing. And say, I mean, like, I think as far as growth goes, that's another place where, you can kind of look at it as getting out of your own way, and say, okay, well, like my vision's brought it here. Like, let's see how far it can go with new eyes and with a new sort of like lease on life. So yeah, so I mean, like, I really didn't in the contract, like, I really didn't, like, sort of get too particular and in the weeds as far as, like, "Hey, you have to keep this, and keep that," because I had very much already made sure that I was, like, emotionally prepared to truly, like, let it go, and to let it be the new buyers, the new owners, vision, of what I'd built. So that was, yeah, I think that was something I did. I just truly needed to make sure I was okay with that, and that was key for me.
So, from the sales process itself on Flippa in general, what were some of the key takeaways that you could share for entrepreneurs listening that they could benefit from?
Yeah. Number one, don't have imposter syndrome. I think it's something that I always struggled with, particularly with this business, as far as, it being such a niche market, and it not being, like doing multi-millions a year or anything like that. It was never built to be that. It was never designed or intended to be that. But I had a successful business on my hands. And I needed to mentally get out of my own way and see that. And I think that the sale and going through it with Flippa, and particularly with Malia, like with her holding my hand and encouraging me, it's very much I'm proud of it in a completely different way than I was before. Because now I think I view myself more so now as an entrepreneur and as a business owner than I did when I was actively running it. And it's been such a welcome surprise in my life, like especially at this point in my life, to be able to make the exit and to sell it for a profit. Like my husband and I certainly aren't like running for early retirement, but it's definitely given us that luxury for me to be able to truly be a stay-at-home mom for a few years and to focus on the children and to really be present in this chapter of life, which we won't get back. And so I would encourage anyone. I would encourage any, like if you're a stay-at-home mom with a side hustle now, like you are a business owner. Don't let all of like the imagery out there and the idea of like you've got to be doing multi-million dollars a year to be legitimate. No, like there is a place for everybody in this like big business world. And like great oaks grow from tiny acorns sort of thing. Everybody has to start somewhere. And if it's your vision and you're doing well with it, then stick to it. And who knows where it'll take you. So yeah, so I think that like the imposter syndrome is a big one that I would say has sort of been brought to the forefront of my mind through this
Hmm.
process. And then I think that like, through it all, on the back end of everything, my advice to everybody would just be just do it. If you have an idea, like, it doesn't have to be a big budget idea, but just find a way and sit down and let your creativity come through, and who knows where it'll take you.
Hmm.
You never know.
Yeah.
So that would be where those are the things that I've sort of learned for myself that I would tell myself from, I would tell myself 10 years ago, to sort of just get my own ego out of my own way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good segue into kind of the emotional impact of all of this.
Yeah.
So you touched on it briefly there, but what was the emotional experience like when it came to let go of the
Yeah.
business?
So, I this has been, say, a big part of my life for 10 years, and has been a big part of my family's life, my parents' life. So, say I mentioned that everything was hand sewn, and we ended up with a team of sewers by the time I was making my exit, that were, sort of contracted by us and everything. I wanted to make sure that if they wanted to stay on, they were taken care of. And that was a big part for me was making sure that their transition was seamless as well. Um, my mom and dad were like they've been at retirement age for a few years, so it was amazing timing for them as well, because I wanted to be able to turn around and say, "Hey, like actually go and be retired now. Like don't worry about me anymore. Don't worry about Dottie anymore." And that left, the customers, because one of the most wonderful things about this business is you do get the interactions online and within the community and face to face at the events and everything with this customer base that you built. And I have customers turned friends who have been with me since 2015, 2016. So it was so part of the process for me was, like when everything was getting finalized, contacting them one on one in a lot of cases and just saying like, hey, like, like this is a good thing. Like, and explaining that like, hey, like this is not like this is not a sale, caused by by necessary circumstances. I'm not being forced into anything. This is a happy thing. And, I hope you'll still be in my life, and I hope that we'll still be friends and everything. And then of course, like having the opportunity to like online sort of like make the announcement that, hey, like, again, like this is a good thing. Like I'm very excited to introduce to you the new owner, and make that transition with the customers there. As far as for me personally, like at home, as I mentioned, like I had gone through a lot of like the emotional process before even deciding to look into selling the business, because I had to make sure that I was ready to let it go emotionally. I cannot tell you how much like the timing has been perfect. and what it has meant to be able to already, just in the past 6 months to be able to be truly 150% present with my children at home, especially over the summer, and to not have any distraction in the background because time goes by. They say, like,
That's right.
they say this time goes by so quickly, and it's so true.
That's right.
And so I'm very thankful to be able to have this luxury at this end with them.
Nice. And did you have involvement after the sale? Like, did you have an earnout or how did it work?
Yeah, so, contractually, we gave ourselves 90 days, that I would essentially be, like, kind of on call. The buyer, she was super reasonable with that. We essentially had a weekly sort of, like, FaceTime or, like, phone call, sit down. She would even send me her questions, like, in an email, like, ahead of time. She's very organized, it's wonderful. And, we would sort of, like, sit down and go through all that together. We did have the opportunity, she actually came to my house, and we had, like, the inventory handoff, like, the physical handoff, and we gave ourselves, like, a day to sit down with the computer face to face and go through the operations and logistics and everything, in person, and I think that was invaluable for both of us, and just sort of gave us the peace of mind that, it was all happening, it was all okay. But yeah, so we gave ourselves 90 days. We just came to the end of that last month. And as I mentioned, like, she's lovely. Like, I'm more than happy to help. Like, she'll send me the odd email question or text message, and that's absolutely more than okay. And I like staying in touch with her. I like having an excuse to check in and say hello. So yeah, it's been a nice, seamless process with
Nice.
her.
Nice. Yeah, you were part of the same community.
Yeah.
So it really makes it quite a smooth transition relative to like, for example, like a big fund buying it or something like that. Very,
Yeah, where it's all
very different.
impersonal and
Yeah.
yeah.
So for entrepreneurs listening to this and they're considering selling, what advice could you give them? We already touched on some, but general advice for thinking
Yeah.
about selling.
Just, like, make sure that you have your paperwork all in a row as far as, like, you should already be kind of, like, up to date on your sales figures and everything anyway. But having said that, don't let that put you off.
Mhm.
Like, goodness knows I am not a business manager and I am not an accountant by any stretch of the imagination. And I thought that, like, my files and my records and everything were pretty, like, basic and frugal. But they were more than enough to plug in all the numbers that was necessary into the master file that Flippa, the template that Flippa sends you, and to keep everything updated and up to date. Um, and I would say transparency is sort of key. The more that you are comfortable sharing with potential buyers who have already signed the NDA, the more that you're comfortable sharing with them up front, I think the better, because it's going to show them that you're serious, and it's going to just, take away a lot of the initial questions and doubts that they might have. And it'll just help everything go more quickly, as far as getting that traction and finding that right person goes. But don't be put off by it.
Yeah. And I think that answers my next question about pitfalls is literally just being prepared, well
Yes.
prepared with documents and
Yeah.
following the template that was provided. I think that that's a really good example of how to avoid the challenges because most of the time it is just not having proper records and organization for sure.
Exactly, exactly.
So, what's future plans? What's next for you after the
Well,
sale? And are you
that's the
working on
excite
anything?
yeah, the exciting thing. I have 50 million ideas in my head. So, my husband and I, like, sat down. He always said, like, "Stop. Like, you've got this time. Enjoy this time. Don't worry about anything else."
Hmm.
And that's, as I've said, like, that's been a wonderful luxury to have, and, that is my plan for the next couple of years until my youngest goes into sort of, like, full-time day school. Um I would be getting in my own way to try and launch anything and do it justice. And it would sort of be like defeating the point almost to like rush into anything new. But I have the itch now, I'm a business owner at heart. I think I'm a shop girl at heart. I love retail. I love buying. I love production. I love all of it, and tying it all together with nice facts and figures and numbers. So I think I would definitely like to get back into the retail world, or
Mhm.
like the design world and production, and I'd like to do something on a larger scale right off the bat. That is the other sort of like luxury that this sale has afforded me, as we've just taken some of that sale money and put it away for my next project. And yeah, I have the luxury of time to sort of refine whatever that looks like. And in the meantime, say my husband is still active duty military, and he'll retire from the military in a couple of years. So once we're stationary, and once the children are big enough that they don't need me like 24/7,
Mhm.
that'll be the time. That'll be the
There you go.
time that I can look at the next project.
So has your definition of success changed after all this?
I think so. I think so. Yeah, I feel like I mentioned, I feel a lot more legitimized as a business owner. I feel more accomplished now, honestly. Like, the sale has afforded us a lot of luxuries in a literal sense, and for me in like a personal fulfillment sense. And yeah, it's given me a lot more confidence to take on whatever's next.
Yeah. And you're gonna do it again is the
Yes.
idea here. You're
Yeah,
ready to do
exactly.
it.
So like I said, like I've got the itch. I love it. Like I really enjoyed the process of selling and putting it out there and everything. And so yeah, so I'd love to do it again.
Amazing, amazing. Well, wherever you guys are listening on iTunes or Spotify or YouTube, definitely check out what Samantha has done. Check it out on Flippa, all the stories on the blog as well. But thank you so much for coming on the Humans of Flippa show, Samantha.
Thank you for having me.